This is Kiruna, Sweden's northernmost city, located 145 kilometers above the Arctic Circle and just over 120 years old. A place of vast landscapes, northern lights, dark winters, and endless summer days. But something strange is happening in this remote town. Kiruna is moving, literally. And it's all because of a single company, the same company that built this city from the first start. And it isn't a small project. We're talking thousands of homes, schools, hospitals, shops, even a 113-year-old church weighing 740 tons, an entire functioning city being relocated piece by piece. And here's the twist. When Kiruna was first built, they already knew this day might come, that one day the city might have to move. But that future felt distant, a problem for another generation. And that problem is today's reality. So what makes this remote Arctic town so valuable that a company would move an entire city to save it? How do you even move a city? And what does it cost? Not just in money, but in lives and memories. This is the story of Kiruna and how a single company is moving an entire city. To understand this, we need to rewind a bit. Kiruna's entire existence is defined by one thing: iron ore. Vast deposits of it, locked inside two mountains, Kirunavaara and Luossavaara. But this wasn't some sudden discovery. The Sami people had known about the iron for centuries. They lived on this land long before cities, railways, or borders existed. In 1696, a Swedish bookkeeper wrote down rumors of iron hidden in the hills. 40 years later, in 1736, a Sami man named Mangi formally reported the deposits to Swedish authorities gathered at Jukkasjärvi Church. For that information, he was rewarded with 100 riksdaler and lifelong tax exemption, an extraordinary payment at the time. Swedish officials mapped the area and even renamed the mountains after the king and queen. Yet, despite that, they are still known today by their Sami names. So the iron was known, the land was mapped, but nothing happened for more than a century. The answer lies in chemistry and geography. The ore was rich, but it contained high levels of phosphorus, making it useless for steel production with the technology of the time. And even if it had been usable, this place was brutally remote. The nearest city, Luleå, lay more than 350 kilometers to the southeast, and with no roads or railways connecting the two. So Kiruna remained untouched, just land. But everything changed in 1878. That year, the Thomas process was invented, a metallurgical breakthrough that allowed phosphorus to be removed from iron ore. Overnight, Kiruna's mountains went from worthless to invaluable. And 12 years later, in 1890, a mining company was founded to extract that iron, known as LKAB. But this raised a new question. How do you ship millions of tons of iron ore from one of the most remote places on Earth? The answer was radical: the Ore Line Railway, one of the most ambitious infrastructure projects in Scandinavian history. In 1898, Sweden and Norway agreed to finance and build a railway stretching from Luleå to the mines and then to the ice-free port of Narvik in Norway. This mattered because Sweden's Baltic ports freeze solid in winter. Narvik does not. Thousands of railway workers labored in brutal Arctic conditions, blasting through mountains and laying track across frozen wilderness. By 1899, the railway reached Kiruna. By 1903, it was complete. And almost overnight, a town appeared. What had been a handful of shacks became a settlement of 250 people. From the very beginning, Kiruna was a company town, built, owned, and managed by LKAB. But LKAB's local manager, Hjalmar Lundbom, wanted more than a chaotic mining camp. He believed that if people were going to live here, they deserved a real city. The location wasn't random. The city was placed on the western slope of Haukivara Hill, chosen specifically for its milder microclimate and close access to the mine. By 1910, Kiruna had grown to 12,000 residents, and in 1912, LKAB gifted the town something symbolic: Kiruna Church, a striking wooden structure inspired by both Sami design and Nordic architecture, later voted Sweden's most beautiful building. It sounds almost idyllic, but beneath all of this, quite literally, was something far larger. The mine beneath Kiruna is a colossus, the largest underground iron ore mine in the world by production. It stretches more than 1.3 kilometers below the surface, with vast cavernous chambers where thousands of tons of ore are blasted and hauled out every single day. For over a century, this mine has been Kiruna's lifeblood. No mine means no jobs, no economy, no reason for 18,000 people to live this far north. And that dependency was about to create an impossible problem. So how did Kiruna end up in this situation? The mining method used at Kiruna is called sub-level caving. In simple terms, you carve out the iron ore from deep underground and let the rock above collapse into the empty space. It's efficient, it's profitable, but it comes with a price. Because when the ground collapses below, the surface above doesn't stay still. It sinks and cracks. By the early 2000s, the first visible fissure appeared on the outskirts of Kiruna. At first, it looked harmless, just a crack in the ground, but it kept growing, year after year, inching closer to homes, streets, and public buildings. The subsidence zone was spreading. Geologists ran the numbers, and the results were impossible to ignore. To continue mining the richest parts of the ore body, the tunnels would have to extend directly beneath Kiruna's city center. In 2004, LKAB delivered the ultimatum. Large parts of Kiruna would have to be relocated. But here's the truth. It wasn't really a choice. Shut down the mine and the town collapses economically. No jobs, no industry. So what do you do when the thing keeping your city alive is also destroying it? Sweden made a decision few places ever face. Kiruna have to move, literally. The announcement went out to the world. The city would be dismantled, transported, and rebuilt about 3 kilometers to the east, piece by piece. It was pragmatism taken to its extreme. But what does that actually mean? Because this isn't just moving a few buildings. This is relocating an entire functioning city, while keeping daily life running with as little disruption as possible. So they started with a question: where do you put it? Urban planners chose a site roughly 3 kilometers east of the existing city center, just beyond the projected collapse zone. Locals had long called the area Death Valley, a flat, barren stretch of industrial land. Not exactly inviting, but it had one critical advantage: stable ground. In 2011, an international design competition selected white architect's vision for New Kiruna. The new plan introduced things old Kiruna lacked: a true central plaza, compact walkable streets, better lighting for the long polar nights, and modern amenities woven throughout. The price tag was staggering, roughly $2.4 billion, and LKAB would pay nearly all of it. Even though the company was now fully state-owned, the Swedish government's position was simple: you cause this, you fix it. But LKAB saw it as an investment. Geological studies indicate that tens of millions of tons of high-grade iron ore lie beneath parts of the old town, or worth several $billion at today's prices. Relocating the city meant decades of continued mining. Construction began in mid-2010. First came the groundwork. Highways and railways were rerouted away from the unstable zone. Then came the anchor building, Kristallin, the Crystal, a gleaming golden city hall completed in 2018. In a deliberate act of continuity, the clock tower from the old 1960s city hall was dismantled and rebuilt beside it, so the familiar chimes would still echo through the city. By 2022, new apartment blocks, shops, hotels, and cultural centers had risen. Officials held a grand opening festival. New Kiruna was no longer a concept, it was real. But building a new city is only half the challenge. Actually moving the old one? That's where things become extraordinary. Every resident living inside the danger zone was given a choice: accept a new home in the new city, newer, modern, but often more expensive. Sell your property to LKAB at market value plus 25% and relocate on your own. If your house was structurally sound, LKAB would lift it off its foundation and physically move it to the new town. Yes, entire houses. A specialized moving crew was assembled, and over time they became remarkably efficient. Each relocation followed a carefully planned process. Houses were first surveyed and structurally reinforced where needed. Utilities such as electricity, water, and heating were disconnected, and the buildings were lifted using hydraulic systems before being placed onto steel beams or transport platforms. Slowly and with extreme precision, the houses were then moved to their new locations, where new foundations had already been prepared. Once in place, the buildings were reconnected to infrastructure and restored for continued use. Planning Chief Göran Kars later noted that in many cases it was cheaper to move a house than to demolish it and rebuild from scratch. But beyond the economic logic, the process also allowed parts of the city's history to physically survive the relocation. But not everything could be saved. Some buildings were torn down and salvaged. However, one building was non-negotiable: Kiruna Church. Built in 1912, this wasn't just architecture, it was identity. Demolition was never an option. The church had to move. In August 2025, after years of planning, the operation began. The 740-ton wooden church was lifted onto a custom-built steel platform with 120 steerable wheels, reinforced so the entire structure could move as a single unit. The move was slow and deliberate. Hydraulic controls guided the platform with millimeter precision, while sensors monitored tilt, vibration, and structural stress. 2 engineers remained inside the church throughout the journey, listening for any sign of strain. To clear the route, roads were widened, power lines rerouted, and a viaduct dismantled. The journey was just 5 kilometers, at less than 1 kilometer per hour. Crowds gathered. Sweden's king watched. For 2 days, the church crawled across the Arctic landscape, a cathedral on wheels. By mid-2025, 25 major buildings had been relocated. 16 more were still waiting. The old city center was sealed off, streets empty, buildings abandoned, the ground beneath them slowly giving way. Then, in September 2025, LKAB delivered another shock. New geological surveys showed the subsidence zone was far larger than first predicted. What was once expected to affect only the old city center now stretched well beyond it, reaching neighborhoods that were never supposed to move. An additional 6,000 people and 2,700 homes were suddenly added to the relocation plan. The scale of the project didn't just increase, it doubled. So this is where we are now, a city built to extract iron, now facing ground that can no longer hold it. What began as a mining project more than a century ago has turned into a relocation spanning over 30 years. Kiruna isn't moving because it wants to. It's moving because the alternative is collapse. Beneath the streets lies the resource that gave the city life. Above it lives the community that depends on it. And between the two stands a decision that few places will ever have to make.